Hello everyone, my name is Kitetsu and welcome back to my channel. So this is part 2 of the Idoneth Deepkin lore video. I'm actually recording this straight after the first part, so I haven't even uploaded that yet and I have no idea how it's done. But hopefully you guys liked it and I'm not wasting my time right now making part 2. But yeah, we were basically getting to the point of looking at the origin story of the Idoneth Deepkin. We just got to the part where Teclis had extracted the first elven souls from Slaanesh, and he'd claimed them for himself, awakened them as the Sithai, and yeah, this is where we're picking up the story now. So Teclis had great ambition for the Sithai. He wanted to create the perfect elven race, the first reborn race, more noble and pure than any that might follow. As one of the elven gods of Hysh, there Teclis intended them to live. As a powerful sorcerer, he taught them the ways of his magic. He built them a mighty city to live in, but something was wrong. The Sithai were an entity beyond Teclis's understanding. He was naive, believing them to be perfect, but for all of his attempts to tutor them, educate them, and mold them into these perfect beings of his mind, the Sithai merely became more and more withdrawn. They didn't want his guidance, they didn't want his knowledge, and that was because they harboured a darkness within themselves, and at the time they didn't quite understand it either. They knew there was something wrong with them, but they couldn't quite work out why. Teclis, as a great seer, used his magic to look into the souls of his beloved elves, and he kind of recoiled in horror. These beings were not of light, but they were filled with darkness and shadow, so impenetrable that even he couldn't see into it. As he shone the light of his gaze into their souls, immediate ramifications began. Some Sithai went mad, like suddenly realising what they were, and the rest, realising that Teclis might seek to basically exterminate them, fled for their lives. Some of the darkness within them was born from Slaanesh, the dark god that they were released from. Ultimately, the Idoneth, as the Sithai became, constantly tried to suppress their minds from all dreams, pleasure and sensations, but it wasn't enough, and the Seekers of Slaanesh were still able to find them through this kind of dark connection that they have with Slaanesh. Where did the Sithai run? Well, obviously they went to the seas, deep down into the darkest depths of the ocean, a place immediately comforting and familiar to their souls because obviously they'd previously worshipped Mathlann. Under the seas, they renamed themselves the Idoneth, a word meaning deep seclusion in their ancient dialect, but the tragedy was only just beginning for them. They hid themselves with powerful enchantments so that Teclis might never find them, or anyone else for that matter, and under the seas they built these vast cities, pretty much on the floor of the ocean. They have these underwater realm gates called whirlways, which connect these cities together. It's a bit of a difficult word to say, but the first city they built was called Gilraki. I hope I'm saying that correctly. I don't know why they have to make these words so difficult, but hidden deep below the seas of Hysh is where they built Gilraki, and following the founding of that great city, the Idoneth then split into enclaves and dispersed across the oceans of the realms. They built the city of Priam, for example, in Isherann, and that was filled with the most noble of the Deepkin, and their strangest city they built was Galanor, and that's the moving city built on top of an enormous sea monster called a Scaphodon. That city started off in Isherann and now apparently it's in Gur, likely travelling through one of those whirlways. The great city is currently under attack from the Skaven, and it's nice to have another reference to the Skaven in the lore because they're one of my favourite armies. So they've fled under the oceans, they built these cities, they think they are free, but it was not to be thanks to the darkness within their souls. As the first elven children were born in their cities below water, the Idoneth realised in horror that they were cursed beings. The children died in droves. If they were lucky, 1 in 100 survived, and these would become the Isherann and Akhelian. The most powerful sorcerers that they had could see that the children that died had weak souls that were withering away and failing as their lives faded away. They were in a dire situation, basically on the brink of extinction yet again. They sought far and wide for a cure. maybe a cure to their affliction doesn't even exist, but they at least found a solution, one that was barbaric, horrific and steeped in death, but it was the only one that could save their race. They realised that they could use the souls of other creatures to keep alive the children with the weak souls, who were the Namarti. It wouldn't last indefinitely, however, and the souls would need continual replacements. Not only that, but the soul binding process is excruciating for the Namarti. They are left physically scarred from the process, and that is when they're given their iron collar and half soul branding on their forehead, but it's the only chance they have to survive to adulthood, otherwise they basically just die. So they've built their vast cities underwater, they've divided into enclaves with a ruling council, but each enclave has its own agenda. Some of them pursue isolationism, which is probably the majority of them. They want nothing to do with the outside world unless they are carrying out the soul harvesting raids, and then there are a few more, such as the ones that I believe live in Akhelians, who are far more aggressive and they want to expand out across the oceans and realms. The Isherann and Akhelian are stuck together, however, because the Isherann alone are able to carry out the rituals and harvest the souls and therefore sustain their race, but they're not powerful enough to seek out and harvest the required souls without the help of the Akhelian. So they kind of need each other, and the enclaves kind of end up stuck, full of a balance of different Idoneth. So who are the Akhelians? They are basically the warriors of the Deepkin. They are the first to be marshalled in times of war or when a raid is required for fresh souls. The Akhelian, like their healthy elven brethren, live to extremely great ages. Only falling in battle can cut their lives unnaturally short. But as warriors, the Akhelians are highly trained and disciplined. They spend literally decades learning the arts of war and strategy. The most experienced and proved Akhelian warriors ride onto battle on the Fangmora eels, and it's considered a great honour for a warrior to become a Fangmora rider. It takes a great amount of skill to master these creatures due to their very wild nature. Conversely, those who are younger and yet to prove themselves in battle are usually tasked with manning weapons on either the Allopex sharks or the great leviadon turtles. The Akhelian Fangmora eel riders are broken down into two main groups. The first are the Akhelian Guard, hopefully I'm saying that correctly, who have a more defensive role, and secondly are the Morsar Guard, who wield the spears and they've got those crested helmets. Apparently they can actually harness the electrical kind of energies of their eels through their spears, making them particularly deadly, so I like the storyline behind that. Then the turtles, the leviadon, these are rare creatures from the deep, but their immense bulk makes them exceptional battering rams, and additionally they are surrounded by magic energies that make them very hard to target with ranged attacks, which is really cool. So apparently they can be targeted by an entire band of archers, only for the magic around them to cause the arrows to swerve far clear of their intended target. It's almost like they've got kind of a magical force field around them. So among the greatest of the Akhelian are the kings and queens, and these are the military commanders of the army. They are undisputed masters of war. Fighting is all they have ever known, dedicating their lives to their martial training and battle basically. They are immensely skilled warriors who are deadly with a sword or spear, and they ride into battle atop a deep mare, which is an incredibly rare underseas creature. They are also tactical geniuses, for they constantly have to assess the viability of carrying out a raid, because if the losses are too high, then the rewards of the souls are not enough to offset the risks. They really don't want to lose Akhelian or the magicians, because otherwise they're basically losing the fully souled elves for basically the Namarti. So we also have another character who is the most reputable Akhelian king, and that is the High King Volturnos, who commands deep respect from all of the Idoneth, and he is known as the High King of the Deep. Of all of the original Sithai that were released from Slaanesh by Teclis, it's rumoured that Volturnos is the last one that is still alive, and apparently he was actually the first soul ever released from Slaanesh. So he has quite a cool backstory, and he's also armed with weapons gifted to him by Teclis himself. He has Sealith, the magic shield, and Astra Solus, a fabled saber. So that's that, and he also rides a deep mare that apparently is described as a prince among its own kind. That's the one I said I'm not madly keen on his model, but you know, if his backstory is cool enough, then I'll probably build him anyway. So yeah, basically that is their strategy of battle. You've got the different waves that attack, the first one being the Namarti, who rush in to engage the enemy, and then when the time is right, the second wave sweeps in, and that's the Akhelians, who are the completely souled military of the Deepkin. So that's how they fight. But to finish off, what do the other races think about the Deepkin? Well, to be honest, the Deepkin are somewhat of an enigma. Few know of their existence beyond perhaps the terrible rumours of settlements disappearing into the mist. The Deepkin mostly prefer isolation, and beyond collecting souls, they just don't really want to have anything to do with the realms. They're quite happy just living under the seas. Additionally, they've got this powerful magic to conceal themselves below the seas, and their movements across the land are also relatively shrouded too. And the tidecasters in particular cast this powerful arcane spell across a settlement, and it might even be part of the ether sea, so that when it's being raided, if anyone survives, they slowly start to lose all of their memories of the attack. And I think it said in the magazine that at first the memories start to fade to like nightmares, and then they just disappear altogether. The spells haven't been entirely successful, however, because many of the races have their own magical prowess and guile, so repeated raids on their settlements don't go unnoticed or unforgiven. For those races, they start to harbour, as you'd expect, an intense distaste for the Deepkin that can result in intense blood feuds. But what can the Idoneth really do? Because for them, it's either kill or die. Some enclaves have pledged themselves to fight for Sigmar during times of dire need against chaos, and in this case, the need is usually as pressing as their need to collect souls, because the threat of chaos can be extreme, you know, such as what's already happened in the Age of Chaos. The Deepkin ultimately want to survive. They understand the fate that happened to the old world better than perhaps any other race in the mortal world, and if they have to fight with Sigmar to push back chaos in times of dire need, then they will do so. As for Nagesh, we don't know the extent of his relationship with the Idoneth yet, but obviously they feature into the Soul Wars. But what we do know is that he harbours an intense hatred for them. Just as Sigmar's Stormcast Eternals are immortal and their souls never reach the realm of Shaiish, so too does the Deepkin's theft of souls enrage Nagesh. He believes that the souls they steal for their continued existence are rightfully his. Okay, so there we have it. That was my 2 parts on the lore of the Idoneth Deepkin. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it's given you some stuff to think about. To be honest, I learned a huge amount from the article. I thought it was absolutely brilliant, and I'm really excited to get my hands on some of these models. But I hope you're all doing well. Don't forget, I've got my giveaway at some point this week as well. It might be on Saturday, but we'll just have to wait and see how my recording schedule and editing turns out. But that is going to be a Start Collecting box, and it's going to be open to pretty much the whole world. So, you know, I'll send you vouchers if I can't post you one of the Start Collecting boxes. And the last ones I've done have been really successful. But yeah, anyway, if you like the video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. If you are new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe. You can support me on Patreon. The link is in the description, and I will see you guys really soon.